Hi there. Greetings. Thank you for joining me once again for what I hope to be the last episode in the Brush Bicycle Motor project. Now, I'm recording this at the start, and I'm guessing if it turns out it isn't the last episode, then I'll have to re-record the whole starting video again. So if you're seeing this, I take that as a good sign that this will be the last episode. So in this episode we're creating a fiberglass GRP structure to replace the wooden platform that I had from the previous episodes. It's not that this is not rigid, and it's not that it won't hold the motor, but it doesn't hold the motor quite securely enough. The reason being, of course, that the straps that screwed into this and went over the motor, they are not firm enough to hold it steady. So it's not the wood, it's the straps that failed, but because the straps failed, we've got to build a whole new structure. Now the new structure has to be like this, but I think I could get away with making it thinner, maybe, we'll see. Like this, but it's going to allow the motor to sink into it and hold it very securely, and have a piece that goes over the top to conform to the structure of the motor. It won't be able to move anywhere once these two things are bolted together. Going up from this side, which will be the side that goes up against the bicycle horizontal fork, this is going to go up and wrap around that horizontal fork, and then go up to allow like a bracket, so you can interface with the back piece, so it all holds into the frame as firmly as possible and will not be able to twist this way. So when the motor's kicking off, it won't go clunk and grind into the gears and grind into the spokes. So it will be rigid, and also maybe not too heavy. That's the plan. So to do that, I'm going to have to create a mould, and this is what I'm doing here. It's a mould in cardboard, which I've glued together with the hot melt glue. It's cheap and cheerful, and at this stage I've lined the mould with PVA glue and plastic. Now, of course, the reason being, when the GRP is set, I want to be able to get this thing away from the GRP. I don't want it to be messed up, and I want it to be a specific shape. Now, you've seen me previously sculpting the last components freehand. Well, it's one way to do it, but you do end up sanding things more. I don't want to be doing that this time round, hence the mould. Yeah, so onwards I guess. Now, I suspect I'm getting ahead of myself. Having shown you the mould, it's probably useful to show you how I got to the mould stage. Now, you've seen me previously make things freehand on the desk, which is one way to make things, but it can be messy and it can waste material when you don't want to do this, because GRP costs good money. You also don't want to do this because if you create things freehand, you often end up sanding them, and by sanding GRP you create a fine plastic dust that you don't want to be breathing in, you don't want it getting into everything in the room, and you sure don't want it getting into the environment or your eyes or anything else for that matter. So this process is all designed to create the part you want with the least sanding involved, and that's the best way to be, isn't it? So let me just briefly review how we got to the cardboard mould stage, just for anyone who's interested. If you're not interested, well, just skip forward a few minutes until you get to the next juicy bit. Hey, right, one moment. Well, this is the box, and yeah, made of cardboard. I basically just folded it around the original piece. Now I'm going to raise the back of it here just to create a nice crease, and a curved crease at that, and this will support the aluminium stick, the one that meets up with the front of the bike. So I've just got to glue those in. There they are, glued. Cover with a bit of tape, and yeah, time for some glue. Let's smear glue over everything. This will help the plastic release. That's the theory anyway. Yeah, no, this is not quite the way we do mould release normally, but this is a one-off mould, so it'll help things come apart, trust me. Now, of course, because we don't want to put GRP straight in the PVA, let's put some plastic down into the PVA, and the PVA will hold it kind of in place. Kind of in place while the GRP is setting. Smush it into place. You know, I had problems last time I tried to record some GRP work in that the blessed recorder didn't record. Anyway, so I've tidied up the plastic around this, allowed this to dry just a little bit. It doesn't have to dry all the way through. That PVA can stay wet. It's fine. It's going to help the release. The mould will be destroyed, obviously, but, well, if I don't allow it to dry, that is. But I'm not fussed because it's only cardboard and it's a one-off thing. Now, be careful never to work anywhere near anybody who is prone to the fumes from GRP, because it's not nice to be breathing that stuff in when you're choking. For my part, I think I've gone and lost my... Yes, I had a spatula. Oh no, I'm holding the spatula, ignore me. See, that the fumes are already affecting me. Oof. Now it is rather pungent. So we get the lid on, we keep the amount of GRP we're working with to a minimum. Still in shot. Yeah, that's another rookie error. Knock your tripod whilst recording and regret it for the rest of the video and every single time you re-record. This stuff is carcinogenic. Do not let it get near your food, near your mouth, bare skin. It will be absorbed. It is not safe. When you store it, keep it away from animals and anyone else that might be dumb enough to touch it and get it on their skin. Ill-educated enough, shall we say. Alright, so I say the best place for that is in a locked box. Treat it like a bullet because it's dangerous. Anywho, there we go, mix that in. This is the pink stuff is a catalyst, by the way. It causes the GRP to start to warm up and to cure. Now, it's not a complete cure. This cure takes several weeks, sometimes several years to complete, and some GRP projects, they are so large that they will take decades to fully cure up. We're not going to be too worried about that because we're going to get it to the point of being rigid enough to work with, and it with quite suitable enough for our needs. I'm going to mix in that catalyst thoroughly so it can get proper access to all the GRP, because if you don't mix it properly then you'll get sticky bits, bits that don't cure. You can try and cure it by heating it in a kiln later on, or an oven. Don't do that, waste of time. If you get into that position, throw it all out, start again. Make sure no one gets near the ruined project, because that sticky GRP is dangerous, and guess what, it's also a carcinogen. So I'm going to start off by lining the mould with a layer, and this is as straightforward as it gets. I might have to go back and do more, or do a thin layer first of all. Then on top of that I'm going to layer one layer of aluminium mesh. I'll show you that. Aluminium mesh is one of these. Whoop, hold it still, Matt. There we go. It's expensive, but it's worth it. But we're going to spread this stuff out first of all. Now, I've created this mould with no hard edges. I mean, it's no hard corners. Hard corners and hard edges are not your friend. Particularly hard corners, because when you subject the device to a stress, the corners are where it will show the most stress. If that makes sense. So I'm just going to smear that down there. I'll cut back in when I've smeared this around a little more. So a couple of minutes passed and I've smeared the blob all over the base of the mould. I'm going to start to layer on the aluminium mesh now. Now, always be using gloves every single time, without fail, both hands. Okay, next stage. I have to create this ridge here, which is going to support this ridge here, which is going to support the stick, the aluminium stick. So, in order to do that, I've got to create a nice soft crease there, and a raised platform that it's going to sit on. Then bolts are going to go through into the GRP itself. Possibly some wood, I'm not sure at this stage. Now I smushed that mesh straight into the GRP, and I've made sure that it's got good adherence and it's pushed all the way through. Now you might think, oh, it's okay, I'll just layer it on top and let it be. No. And you can't let the GRP resin flow down through this mesh, because experience has shown that it doesn't. And what you end up with is air pockets, and when those air pockets expand in warm weather, it can actually crack the GRP. So you don't want to do it. You want to make sure that all those layers are as smushed together as possible, that there's no voids carrying gases that can expand, or moisture for that matter. So always do this in a dry condition. And if you have to work outside with things that are less than dry, you make sure you remove as much water as possible before you start. That's for all those who might use the skill to fix a car outdoors or a truck or something. Yeah, so it's as smushed in as I'm going to get it, and now I'm going to come back, change my gloves again. It's worth it. It's worth a pair of gloves, trust me. Change my gloves again and apply another layer of GRP over the top. I'm also going to put more mesh here because obviously we've got to make sure it's rigid all the way along. So I've used the second plastic bag on top of the material here to smush it into all the corners and make sure it's thoroughly spread around. I use gloves as well as the bag, by the way. You've got to be safe. You can never be too safe. Now, at this point, having left it a few minutes, it's starting to kick. The catalyst has kicked off the reaction. It's got warm, and by getting warm, it causes the plastic to set in its place. So it's warm here, and it's starting to get warmer over here as the kicking moves across the build here. This part was laid last, which is why, of course, it's last to kick. So we're going to leave it a wee while, and then we're going to come back to it and remove the plastic bags and see how the kicking process has gone, and see what we need to do to make the rest of the structure. So about 10-15 minutes have passed, and I can feel in this corner, which is the furthest part, it's nice and firm, and the heat is starting to die away, which is the perfect time to start peeling off. You can peel it off sooner, but I always like to peel at this stage when it's cold. Now, a word about kicking times and how fast you make it go. If you use more catalyst and mix it properly, it will kick faster. You'll get it hotter quicker. Now, this can work for you if you need something to just be done soon, but it is better to do it slowly. So use less catalyst, mix more thoroughly, and give it more time, because the longer it takes to cure, to kick, the stronger the bonds will be, so the stronger the piece will be. It's as with everything, if you rush it, you'll end up with a weaker result. It's at this point I realise it's still stuck to this side of the mould. Well, it's to be expected. Let's roll over this side instead. Easy does it now. Of course, the mould is still wet in spite of all this heat, because of course there's moisture, there's water in the PVA. But we're going to work with that. I was tempted to just leave this whole thing on top of the Arga, just to let the warm heat of the Arga just do its thing and dry out the glue. But if I did that, resulting in harder cardboard, of course, if I did that, the risk is that I'd get this thing stuck to the top of the Arga. I don't want to do that. Easy does it. Don't be tempted to just pull at it like a crazy thing, because you will crack a newly cured glue. I learned that the hard way, the expensive way. There we go. Yeah, and you can tell by the look of it, if you've mixed in the catalyst properly, you'll get an even colour, an even pink while it's curing, and then it gets this kind of, I don't know what you call it, off salmon colour. The camera doesn't show it as quite as dark as it actually is in reality. Maybe something I'll deal with in post-production, who knows. Now, I can see in this corner, obviously I've missed out that chunk there, but that's fine, because this is the bit where the motor's going to go. It's going to go in a piece which is going to dip to conform with the underside of the motor, like that, across. That's where, of course, the stick will go when I've cut the trough for it properly. And yeah, so far so good. Well, I decided to take off the rest of the mould. It came off really easily, and you can see so far so good.